Have you ever felt like no matter what you do, you're just stuck? Like the world is moving forward, but you're trapped in the same loop, watching life pass by? That's exactly how 17-year-old Ethan Miller felt every single morning. The alarm on his phone blared again. He slapped the snooze button, buried his face into his pillow, and let out a long, frustrated groan. It wasn't that he was tired, he had slept enough, but something heavier weighed on him. An emptiness he couldn't quite shake. A feeling that he was moving through life without any real control. Every morning seemed to repeat itself: hit snooze, scroll mindlessly through TikTok, eat whatever sugary junk was quickest, rush to school, and carry a pit of anxiety with him the entire day. Ethan's room reflected the chaos of his mornings. Clothes were piled on the chair. Half-empty energy drink cans lined the desk, and his backpack sat open on the floor, stuffed haphazardly with notebooks. The light from the early morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting stripes across his messy room. He could hear his little sister laughing downstairs, his parents bustling in the kitchen, and for a brief second, he envied them, their energy, their ability to move forward while he felt frozen. Man, another day, he muttered to himself, pulling his phone closer. One scroll led to another. 30 minutes vanished in an instant, lost to videos, memes, and the occasional peek at Instagram stories. By the time Ethan finally dragged himself out of bed, the sun was already climbing higher in the sky, his stomach growling, his energy depleted, and his mood heavy with regret. It wasn't just mornings that felt like this. His entire life felt paused. His friends seemed to juggle sports, schoolwork, part-time jobs, and social lives effortlessly. Meanwhile, Ethan felt like he was on autopilot, reacting to everything instead of creating his own experiences. Even things he loved, music, drawing, writing, had become secondary to endless scrolling and distractions. "Why can't I just get it together?" he whispered, staring at the ceiling. The words sounded pathetic even to him. He had tried small changes before. He'd attempted waking up early, doing quick exercises, even brief meditation sessions, but nothing had stuck. The sense of failure was crushing. He felt trapped, paralyzed by his own inability to make progress. But on this particular morning, something shifted. Maybe it was the quiet hum of his house, or the sunlight touching the floorboards, or the sheer frustration of feeling powerless yet again. Ethan realized he couldn't keep living like this. Not another day, not another week. Something had to change. The thought of overhauling everything at once made him dizzy. He didn't have the energy, or the motivation, to rebuild his life in a single giant leap. Instead, he decided on a different approach, one small habit at a time. Just one, and then, if it worked, he would add another. Small, consistent steps that could slowly reshape his life without overwhelming him. The first habit seemed almost ridiculously simple, but it felt radical. Wake up before everyone else in the house. At 6 a.m., he forced himself out of bed, ignoring the phone on his nightstand. No scrolling, no excuses, just him, the quiet, and the soft glow of morning light seeping through the blinds. He planted his feet on the floor and whispered, almost hesitantly, "Today is my day." The words felt strange at first, but even that tiny acknowledgement gave him a flicker of control he hadn't felt in months. For the first time, the morning wasn't dictated by notifications or distractions, it was his. Sitting on the edge of his bed, Ethan let himself feel the stillness. No phone, no music, no chatter, just the sound of the house waking up slowly and the rhythm of his own breathing. He focused on his thoughts, the questions forming in his mind. Who do I want to be today? What do I actually control? For once, he wasn't reacting to the world, he was quietly observing, planning, and reclaiming a sense of agency he hadn't realized he'd lost. The second habit wasn't as gentle. Ethan stepped into the shower and turned on the cold water. The icy blast hit him like a punch, and for a moment, he gasped, shivering violently. His first instinct was to pull back, to seek warmth, to retreat into comfort, but something inside him stayed put. He clenched his fists, focused on his breathing, and let the water shock his system awake. By the time he stepped out, drenched and shivering, he felt more alert than any amount of coffee could have ever achieved. Discipline, he realized, wasn't about avoiding discomfort, it was about meeting it head on. Wrapped in a towel, Ethan moved to the corner of his room where he'd cleared a small space. 10 minutes of mindful stillness followed. No phone, no music, no distractions, just him. At first, it was boring, almost unbearable, but gradually, clarity emerged. He could feel the clutter in his mind dissipating. He asked himself, who do I want to be today? Not what the world wanted him to be. Not what his friends expected him. And for the first time in weeks, Ethan felt a spark of hope. It wasn't a perfect morning. It wasn't even close, but it was different. And that difference, that single, intentional morning, felt like the first brick in rebuilding his life. The next morning, Ethan woke up before the sun again. And this time the quiet didn't feel strange, it felt inviting. There was a subtle anticipation in the air, a sense that he was in control of his own time. After a brief moment of gratitude, he grabbed his notebook and pen, sitting cross-legged on the floor. Okay, today's a win, he muttered to himself. He wrote 3 bullets carefully, what he was grateful for, what would make today a success, and one thing he had to avoid to keep the day on track. He hesitated for a moment on the last one. He wanted to write, don't check TikTok, but then smiled, realizing that it was small things like this that had been sabotaging him for months. He wrote it anyway. It felt like a promise to himself. After journaling, he decided it was time to move. Not running late, not to impress anyone, just movement for himself. Ethan rolled out a yoga mat and started with stretches, feeling his muscles tense and loosen under the motion. Then he moved into push-ups, squats, and a few minutes of jumping jacks. The rhythm of his breathing matched the rhythm of his heart, and he felt a sense of clarity building with each movement. Man, I didn't know it could feel this good to just move, he whispered, a smile creeping onto his face as he wiped the sweat from his brow. It wasn't about looking good, or being the fastest, or even competing. It was about feeling alive, feeling energy and focus in a way he hadn't in months. After his workout, Ethan paused to check in with himself. He leaned against the wall, breathing deeply, asking quietly, am I calm? Am I focused? Am I letting the small stuff distract me? A slight tension in his shoulders caught his attention, and he rolled it out, reminding himself that a minor frustration from yesterday, missing an assignment due to procrastination, didn't define today. These few minutes of reflection were small, but powerful. They were a shield against the chaos waiting outside his room. Notifications, group chats, and looming deadlines. Breakfast was next. Ethan's usual quick-fix cereal and toast were gone. Instead, he cracked a couple of eggs into a skillet, poured a smoothie packed with spinach, bananas, and almond butter into a glass, and sipped slowly. The flavors were simple, but the act felt intentional. Fuel, not filler, he muttered. Each bite reminded him that he was taking care of himself, not just filling his stomach. The difference was subtle but noticeable. He didn't feel the usual 10 a.m. crash, and his focus for the morning's schoolwork felt sharper. By now, Ethan noticed the small ripple effects of these changes. His energy felt more stable. He wasn't just moving his body, he was shifting his mindset. His thoughts weren't racing ahead to homework, social drama, or what he'd missed yesterday. They were grounded, focused on the present. The act of doing something deliberately, intentionally, was teaching him that he could control more of his life than he had realized. Next, he turned to self-care, a small ritual that somehow made him feel more respected in his own eyes. He splashed cold water on his face, then patted on moisturizer. The action was simple, almost silly, but it had weight. He caught his reflection in the mirror and grinned. For the first time in weeks, he felt like someone worth investing in. All right, Ethan, you're doing this, he whispered. It wasn't vanity, it was acknowledgement that effort mattered, and that he deserved the same effort he had been giving to distractions for so long. Finally, he did something revolutionary. He created before consuming. Instead of opening his phone or checking notifications, Ethan pulled out his journal again and began writing ideas for a short story he had been thinking about for weeks. At first, he stumbled, unsure of what to write, but as he scribbled sentences, a rhythm formed, words flowed, and for 10 minutes he was lost in creation. It was exhilarating. The world could wait. He was the author of this small corner of reality. He felt productive, alive, and in control. By the time he finally stepped into the shower and got dressed for school, something had shifted. His shoulders were straighter, his steps lighter, his mind clear. Even his parents noticed. "You're up early again?" his mom asked, a hint of surprise in her voice. "Yeah," Ethan said casually, though he couldn't stop the small smile tugging at his lips. He felt the quiet satisfaction of winning the morning before the day had even officially begun. Walking to the bus stop, Ethan realized just how different he felt. The morning that used to drag him down was now lifting him up. The old habits, scrolling, rushing, drifting, were still there, lurking like shadows, but he had built his own light to walk in. He wasn't perfect. He still felt awkward about keeping up with schoolwork, still worried about grades, still had the occasional pang of loneliness. But the difference was profound. He felt capable. He felt like someone who could navigate the day, not just survive it. And in that quiet moment, waiting for the bus, Ethan made a small, silent promise to himself, one small change at a time, and the rest would follow. Weeks passed, and Ethan Miller began to notice that mornings weren't just starting his day, they were shaping it. The small routines he had layered one by one had created something larger than the sum of their parts. Waking early, journaling, movement, energy check-ins, mindful reflection, intentional meals, self-care, and creation before consumption weren't just tasks, they had become the foundation of a new way of living. One particular Saturday, he woke up before 6 a.m., sunlight just starting to filter through his blinds. The house was quiet, and for the first time, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt like space, space to breathe, space to think, space to act. He took a deep breath, then smiled. He realized he wasn't rushing through life anymore, he was moving deliberately. Step by step, each small win in the morning carried weight throughout the day. Ethan grabbed his journal and wrote his morning bullets. Today, he reflected on the changes he had already seen: more focus in school, more energy during soccer practice, more patience with his little sister, even more confidence in social situations. He marked one thing to avoid: don't scroll first thing in the morning. Simple, yet powerful. After journaling, he moved into a short workout routine. This morning, his movements felt smooth, coordinated, almost effortless compared to the early chaotic mornings before. He felt grounded in his body and his mind, a connection he hadn't known existed. Every push-up, every stretch, every jump seemed to reinforce the internal dialogue he had been building. I am in charge of my life. I am creating my day, not reacting to it. Ethan paused, checking in with his emotions. The tension he sometimes carried from late night studying or social anxiety was lighter today. His thoughts were calm, and for once, his mind wasn't darting between 100 different worries. He recognized that the energy he carried into the day wasn't determined by external factors, text messages, notifications, or social pressures, but by his choices, his habits, his intentional focus. Breakfast followed, a ritual of care and fuel. Smoothies, eggs, oats, they weren't extravagant, but they were deliberate, reminders that his body and mind deserved attention. For the first time, he truly tasted what it meant to nourish himself, not just fill his stomach. The act became almost meditative, each bite reinforcing a simple but profound lesson: small choices compound. Then came a moment Ethan hadn't expected. He spent 10 minutes creating something before touching his phone. Today, it was a short piece of music he had been experimenting with. A melody that reflected his mornings, calm yet powerful. As he played it softly, he felt a sense of pride and ownership over his own world. A sharp contrast to the endless scrolling that used to dominate his attention. Creation had replaced consumption as the first act of his day, and the shift transformed his mindset. School, once overwhelming and draining, felt manageable. Minor frustrations didn't derail him. He participated more in class, helped a friend struggling with a math problem, and even smiled at moments he would have previously ignored. Each action seemed to ripple outward. His focus, his energy, and his confidence affected not just him, but the people around him. By midweek, Ethan realized something crucial. It wasn't about achieving the perfect morning. There would still be mornings he overslept, moments he scrolled too long, or days he stumbled, but perfection wasn't the goal. Ownership was. By reclaiming control of just a portion of his day, his mornings, he had begun to reclaim control over his life. The habits weren't just routines, They were tools that allowed him to design his identity, build his confidence, and shape his experiences. One afternoon, his friend Lucas caught Ethan journaling at the kitchen table. Lucas looked skeptical. "You really do all that stuff in the morning? Feels intense." Ethan smiled. "Not perfect, just consistent. I started small, one thing at a time. It changes everything without feeling like a chore." Lucas nodded slowly. Curiosity piqued. For the first time, Ethan understood the ripple effect. His growth could inspire others without preaching, simply by showing the results of intentional effort. By the end of the week, Ethan felt transformed in ways he hadn't imagined. He wasn't just moving through life, he was building it deliberately. The boy who had felt stuck, anxious, and powerless now carried himself with calm confidence. He had learned that small, intentional steps, layered consistently, could reshape not just his mornings, but his mindset, his identity, and his life. And so, in the quiet of his room one last morning that week, sunlight spilling across the floorboards, Ethan whispered to himself, "I own my mornings, I own my life." And for the first time, he truly believed it. Life doesn't change overnight, and you don't need a perfect routine to transform yourself. It's the small, consistent habits, waking up with intention, reflecting, moving, creating, that accumulate into lasting change. Start with one tiny habit, stack another, and gradually, you'll reclaim control of your mornings and your life. Consistency matters more than perfection, and ownership matters more than shortcuts. Thank you for watching the entire video and sharing these moments with Ethan. If this story inspired you to pause, reflect, or try even one new habit tomorrow, leave a comment below telling us which habit you're going to start. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss future stories, tips, and routines that can help you take control of your life and build the person you want to become.